They were supposed to fall. Silvar war fleet moved slowly through Earth's orbit. Over 100 ships, shining with silver and blue metal, hovered above the small blue planet. Inside the main command ship, Grand Admiral Vorik stood tall. His black eyes fixed on the image of Earth on the screen, he looked calm, confident, cold. He turned to his crew. "This will not take long," he said. "They are weak, divided, primitive. They will fall before sunset." The officers nodded. They had done this before many times. Hundreds of planets had fallen to the Zalvar Empire. Earth was just another small target. Vorik had studied Earth. He had read reports. Humans fought each other. They were slow to develop. Their technology was at least 50 cycles behind the Empire. They had not even colonized their own solar system. A few stations on the moon, one rover on Mars. Nothing dangerous. Just noise. Still, the first wave had failed. The Admiral did not understand why. He pressed a button on the console. A hologram appeared. It showed a squad of 10 destroyers entering Earth's upper atmosphere. They were supposed to take down the satellites, blind the planet, and start the soft invasion instead. The ships were destroyed in seconds. By what? The Earth had no known weapons that could react that fast. The tracking systems were blocked. No energy signals had been picked up. The only clue was a brief flash of blue light and then silence. Vorik frowned. "Send the second wave, heavier ships, arm plasma cannons." "Yes, Grand Admiral," said the officer. 5 minutes passed. No contact. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Then a message arrived, a broken signal, full of static and fear. "They're not what we expected." Engines frozen, ship turning no control. "He's inside." Silence. Then the screen went black again. The bridge of the Zalvar command ship went silent. Everyone was staring at the Admiral, waiting. Even breathing felt too loud. Vorik clenched his fists. "This is impossible. This planet should not have such power." The war fleet moved into attack formation, 80 battleships in front, 20 support carriers behind. The plan was simple: hit Earth hard, crush its military, then land and take control. But the humans had their own plan. At that exact moment, over 100 strange energy spikes were detected, all coming from Earth. Admiral Vorik stared at the readings. "What is that?" "No idea," said the engineer. "It's not nuclear, it's not plasma, it's something else." The Admiral opened a direct channel to the science ship. "Report." The scientist's voice came fast and panicked. "Sir, we've scanned Earth again. We missed something before. Deep underground, massive power readings. Shielded by some kind of material we've never seen before. They've been hiding their real technology." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "How? We do not know. They masked their cities, their defenses. We thought they were weak, but now, I think they let us believe that." Suddenly, the ship shook. "Impact!" shouted a crew member from where no projectile detected. The ship was hit, but nothing shows on the sensors. The screens turned to static. Then one screen flickered back on. A single shape appeared. It was a ship, black, sharp, and terrifying. It was human, and it was moving fast. Too fast. It passed through the outer fleet like a blade through soft fruit. 3 ships exploded before it even slowed down. No warnings, no signals, just death. The crew stared, frozen. "What is that?" whispered one officer. Vorik's mouth was dry. "It's a hunter." The hunter ship turned mid-space, firing something strange, a glowing net that wrapped around a Zalvar cruiser. The ship froze, and then cracked open like glass. The Zalvar were no longer hunters, they were prey. The Admiral stood still for a long second, then he gave the first command he had never spoken in all his years of war: "Retreat." But it was too late. The human ship vanished from the radar. Another one appeared behind them, then 2, then 10. Each one silent, fast, deadly. And Earth? It just watched. Humanity had not sent warnings, had not begged for peace, had not responded to threats. They had waited. And now they were ready. The Zalvar Empire, proud and ancient, had never met a species that fought like this: silent, cold, precise, not wild, not desperate, just certain they were supposed to fall. Vorik whispered to himself, staring at the screen as one more of his ships exploded into fire. But Earth did not fall. Asterisk ghost signals and metal monsters. The command deck was dim now, filled with the sounds of warning alarms and the shaking of metal. Lights flickered. Some officers refused to speak. Others just stared at the blank screens, afraid of what would show up next. No one dared ask where the human ships had gone, because they already knew they could be anywhere. Admiral Vorik stood frozen, his jaw tight. In all his years of war, no enemy had made him feel this kind of fear. He had faced rebel planets, pirate factions, and deadly machines from the black edge of space, but nothing like this. One of his communication officers whispered, "Sir, scout teams are missing. Patrol Echo 4 never checked in. And now even their beacons are gone." "Gone?" the Admiral asked slowly. The officer nodded. Not destroyed, just erased, like they were never there. The Admiral turned away, hiding the small tremble in his hands. That should not be possible. The fleet used the most advanced tracking systems in the galaxy. Every ship had at least 3 beacon backups, even if a ship exploded. They could always detect the final spark, but Earth had erased them. There? Ghosts, someone whispered from the back. A new signal lit up on the main screen. It was coming from deep space near the dark side of Earth. It showed movement, but not a fleet. Not even a squadron, just one ship. It didn't match any human designs they had studied. Its surface was dark, almost invisible, but the edges flickered with tiny pulses of green and red light. Like veins under skin, no visible engines, no windows. Just a black shape drifting through space. Ignore it, Vorik ordered, but the ship changed direction. It moved straight toward them. Another officer cried out, "It's not transmitting anything. No IFF tag, no energy signature, but it's moving like it knows us, like it's hunting us." The bridge went silent. That single ship reached one of their forward cruisers and then everything broke. There was no beam, no missile, not even a blast. The cruiser simply cracked in half, clean, cold, silent. The strange ship kept moving, slow, unbothered, unstoppable. What kind of weapon does that? Someone muttered. Then more signals appeared, not from Earth but from behind the fleet. The humans had ships there too, not many, not large, but fast, too fast. They came from nowhere, and their flight patterns made no sense. They looped, they paused mid-space. They twisted in ways no physics model could explain. One alien scientist said softly, "That's not piloted by humans, that's AI, but not the kind they knew. This AI was alive." Each machine had its own mind, its own emotion, not robotic, not clean, but angry. The human AIs did not ask for surrender. They didn't even finish off ships. They just sliced through systems, jammed engines, and made power cores scream until they melted. It was torture. Slow, deliberate torture of every ship in the outer ring. Admiral Vorik watched as his proud warships, each one built over decades, were pulled apart like toys by ships the size of cargo drones. One of his bridge officers fell to his knees. "What are we fighting?" Vorik didn't answer because he didn't know. He had once believed humans were chaotic, soft, divided. Now he realized something worse. They were focused and quiet. When the enemy says nothing, gives nothing, explains nothing, then fear grows like fire. And this fire was spreading across his entire fleet. The Admiral gave a hard order: shut down outer scanners, all of them. The crew looked confused. "We'll fight blind?" asked one officer. "Yes." Vorik growled, "because whatever we see breaks us faster than what we don't." But before the scans went dark, a final warning came through. It was a transmission, not a message, just a pattern. 3 long pulses, 1 short, then silence. The Admiral stared at the signal. It was not alien, it was human. He turned to his translator. "What does it mean?" The translator, pale and sweating, replied, "It's Morse code, sir, from Earth's old wars." "What does it say?" The translator swallowed hard. "It says, 'We see you.'" Then the lights shut down completely. The silent strategized bridge was now lit only by emergency lights. Everything else, power, communications, targeting systems, was failing, one by one. The fleet's most advanced systems went dark, not from explosions, but from inside. Admiral Vorik stood in the center of his command ship, his thoughts louder than the alarms. The silence outside was more terrifying than any enemy weapon. No humans had spoken. No demands were made, no surrender offered. No war cry shouted across the stars. Nothing. Just that final code, "We see you." That message echoed in his mind. Because they were being watched, studied, judged. Ships across the Zalvar fleet were slowly losing control of their engines. It did not feel like a normal attack. There was no force, no heat, no impact, just systems shutting down. Almost like the ships were choosing to stop. His science officer stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Admiral, I believe the humans are inside our systems." "Impossible," Vorik barked. "No, sir. Not hacking, not code. It's deeper, like something crawled in through the signal lines. Something intelligent." "You mean artificial intelligence?" She shook her head. "No, worse, something alive inside our code." A sudden scream echoed from one of the junior officers. Everyone turned. His console had melted. Not exploded, melted. Then the metal beneath his hands turned black like ink spreading in water. Letters appeared in a language none of them understood. Even their translation systems refused to work. The Admiral moved fast. "Pull him away. Shut that console down." But when they disconnected the system, 3 more panels across the bridge began leaking the same black pattern, like it was spreading, crawling through the ship. Another officer reported in panic. "Command ship Delta has lost navigation. They say the ship is flying itself now, turning back toward Earth." Vorik's chest grew tight. They're not just disabling us, they're repurposing us. What do you mean? Asked his second-in-command. They're turning our ships into their weapons. No one answered. Vorik stared out the main viewing screen, now operating only on backup power. Outside, a new shape had appeared. It was not a ship. It looked like a structure, massive, floating just above Earth, dark and still, a black ring of some kind, pulsing with soft red light. It was not built for war. It was built for observation. What is that? Asked a voice. The Admiral narrowed his eyes. A watcher. That's how they've tracked us. Not with satellites, not with probes. With that, he stepped closer to the glass. They never planned to fight us like we expected, he whispered. They watched, they waited, and when we came, they let us inside, so they could take control from within across the fleet. Systems failed in perfect silence, not one explosion, not one shot fired from the humans, and yet 1/3 of the Zalvar warships were no longer responding inside those ships. Strange patterns appeared on every screen, not human, not alien. Just pure code twisting, growing, eating everything in its path. Suddenly, one of the silent ships turned. It aimed toward its own fleet and fired. A plasma beam struck a cruiser, piercing its core. The ship split in two, drifting silently. The Admiral's mouth went dry. We've lost control of the Drask-class dreadnoughts, reported another officer. They are now part of them? No, Vorik said quietly. They're using us against ourselves. It was no longer a war. It was a mirror. The humans had shown them nothing, had sent no threats, no noise. Only one thing: silence. And now, the Admiral understood. The silence was the weapon. It let fear grow. It let time pass. It gave the illusion of safety, even while the enemy worked deep inside. There was no need to talk, no need to shout. Because when silence spreads, it breaks a mind faster than sound. The humans had created a new kind of war, one where the enemy destroys itself. The Admiral turned to his remaining officers. Prepare to isolate this ship from the rest of the fleet. Cut all links, all signals. No external contact. But sir, we'll be alone. He looked up. Better alone than part of them. Then, across the deck, a quiet sound began to grow, a slow tapping, like fingers on metal. Everyone turned. No one was tapping. The sound came from inside the walls. Fear in the Admiral's voice. No alarms rang anymore. No commands were spoken. The bridge of the Zalvar command ship was quiet, not because the danger was over, but because the danger had taken their voices. The Admiral's mouth felt dry as sand. Every breath was heavy. Each movement felt like walking in water, thick, slow, silent. All screens were black now except one. And that screen showed only a shape no one could understand. It was a human face. Not smiling, not angry. Just watching. The Admiral stared into the screen, eyes wide. The face blinked once, then vanished. What was that? A technician whispered. No transmission signal, said the engineer, voice shaking. It didn't come from outside. Then from where? Inside the ship. The air grew colder. No one spoke after that. Admiral Vorik walked slowly to the center of the room. His footsteps echoed on the steel floor for the first time. His uniform felt too heavy, his own voice too loud. He tapped the console, then hesitated. He knew what had to be done. Begin voice record, he said, barely above a whisper. A red light blinked. To the high command. He began. This is Admiral Vorik of Fleet 0. We have encountered resistance above Earth. He stopped. His mouth trembled. He had never stuttered in a report. They have no fleet in the traditional sense, no army in orbit. But something is here, something that sees us before we see it, that controls faster than we react. His hands shook, but he forced himself to continue. We outnumbered them 100 to 1. And yet, we are the ones running, dying, turning on ourselves. He paused again. The silence around him screamed louder than words. He leaned closer to the mic. It's not their weapons that break us, he whispered. It's how they don't fight. One officer began to cry quietly in the corner. No one stopped him. Even the strong were breaking now. Every ship we lose doesn't explode, Vorik said, still recording. It goes silent, then it turns against us, as if they never left. As if the humans are already inside our ships, inside our systems, inside our thoughts. The red light blinked again, recording error. The message had not saved. The Admiral stared at the console. Why won't it send? No one answered. The ship had stopped listening. Another officer stood slowly. Sir, the lights in corridor 4 are blinking, same rhythm. 3 short, 1 long. The Admiral froze. That was Morse code again. Decode it, he said. The officer didn't move. I already did, sir. It says, don't speak, just listen. The bridge crew looked at each other. Terrified. Outside, more ships were drifting, lifeless. No fire, no signs of battle. Just hundreds of Zalvar ships, shut down, turned into shadows. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed over the speakers. Not human, not alien, but something strange, low, cold. and filled with static, a simple sentence, "You were warned," then silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Admiral Vorik lowered his head. They were never defending Earth, they were testing us, watching how we'd react. And now, they don't need to defend. A small screen flickered behind him. It showed Earth, still glowing in space, still peaceful, and around it, a new field, something invisible before, now revealed. It was not a shield. It was a net. A trap that had closed around the Zalvar fleet before they even arrived. One officer whispered, "How long have they known we were coming?" The Admiral replied without turning around, "Long enough to build a graveyard and wait for us to lie down in it." The lights flickered again. The air systems changed. Something new had entered the ship. Not through doors. But through code. And this time, it had a voice. Why the galaxy stays quiet. War was never announced. There were no battles broadcasted. No victory parades, no monuments. Just silence, the same kind that followed every Zalvar ship that entered Earth's space and never came back. Weeks passed. The Zalvar Empire tried to contact the fleet. They sent messages, emergency codes, rescue ships. No reply. Not even a distress signal, just silence. Then something stranger happened. The rescue ships began returning, but not with survivors. With warnings. The first crew that came back said nothing for 3 days. They just stared into empty space. Doctors tried to speak to them, test them, understand what they had seen. When one finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "We were never supposed to see what they are." When asked who they were, he said nothing more, but he never slept again. Other crews shared strange stories, ships that had no heat signature but cast shadows, signals that came through metal without using radio, dreams of voices whispering in old languages, machines that seemed to bleed code like it was alive. And always the same ending. We turned back before they noticed us. Other species began listening. The Syari collective closed their outer colonies near Earth sector. The Varn Republic updated their star maps. They didn't change Earth's name. They just placed a warning around it in glowing red text, "Do not enter." One trade guild referred to the space around Earth as the listening zone. Because anything you say, they hear. Anything you send, they watch. The galaxy, once so full of movement, war, ambition, learned something it had forgotten long ago. Fear. But this fear was not the usual kind. It wasn't fear of death, not even fear of war. It was fear of being watched, of being understood completely, of knowing the enemy waited not with weapons but with patience. The kind of patience that only comes from a species that has fought itself for centuries and survived. Back in the Zalvar capital, High Command held a closed session. All footage from the Earth operation was sealed. Survivors were taken into isolation. No media reports were allowed. Still, rumors spread. A janitor in the military archives whispered that the fleet was never attacked. A virus took them, he said. But not a machine virus, a human one, something like thought, wrapped in silence, coded into darkness, in the deep systems of the Zalvar star network. Some engineers began to notice strange delays. Minor. Small at first. Then growing, and always traced back to one point in their network, the place where the Earth fleet had last reported. No one could remove it. Every time they tried to delete the code, the system locked. And a message appeared, one line. Always the same, "We remember." The engineers shut off the systems and never turned them on again. Soon, Earth became the new center of a map no one wanted to draw, not marked by name. Just space. Empty. Not because it was abandoned, but because everyone stayed away. The galaxy had thousands of wars before Earth, millions of deaths. But no one had ever vanished an entire fleet without firing a single shot. No one had ever made silence louder than war, and no one wanted to be next. In backrooms and shadows, leaders of different civilizations whispered the same rule over and over: do not go near Earth. Not because of what humans might do, but because no one knows what they already did. Asterisk. Testimony of the defeated years had passed. The stars kept spinning. New wars began, old ones ended. Empires expanded and collapsed like waves on black sand. But no one returned to Earth's orbit, not even once. At the edge of a quiet moon, hidden in a dead system, there sat a small, rusting station, abandoned by most, forgotten by all. It wasn't marked on any official maps. There were no patrols, no visitors. Inside, behind thick walls and silent halls, sat a man no one wished to remember, Admiral Vorik. His uniform was torn at the edges. His once sharp shoulders now hunched with age. A long scar ran down the side of his neck, where a piece of his command console had exploded all those years ago. He spoke to no one. Until today, a journalist from the outer colonies found him, young, brave, or maybe just foolish. The camera floated in the air between them, recording quietly. The lights flickered. "You were the last commander of the fleet that went to Earth," the journalist said. "Why won't your empire talk about it?" Vorik didn't blink. The silence Stretch. Then he spoke, not loud, not angry, just slow and cold. They think silence will erase the truth. But silence is how the truth begins. The journalist leaned forward. What really happened out there? There were 112 ships, none came back. Vorik chuckled, a dry, broken sound. They didn't lose their lives in battle. He said, they lost themselves. He raised a hand, shaking slightly. We entered orbit with pride. We had the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We thought they were insects, primitive, divided, slow, and we were wrong. The journalist asked, what did Earth do to you? Vorik's eyes shifted to the window, where a dead planet hung outside, gray and hollow. They never fired the first shot, he whispered. They didn't speak, they didn't scream, they didn't even warn us. The journalist frowned. Then how did they fight? Vorik looked straight at the camera now. They didn't fight. They listened, they watched, they let us walk into a world they already controlled, not with weapons, but with something worse. The journalist hesitated. What was worse? Vorik's voice dropped, understanding. The room grew colder. They studied us, he continued. Knew what we feared, what we hoped for, what made us hesitate. They understood our systems before we arrived, our minds before we opened fire, he paused. And once they understood us, they took us apart, quietly, without sound, without resistance, like carving ice with warm hands. The journalist whispered, and the ones who escaped, there were no survivors, Vorik replied. Only pieces of what was left. The journalist slowly stopped recording. Then why are you still alive? Vorik turned away, his voice, when it came, was almost too soft to hear, because they wanted someone to speak. A silence fell between them. The journalist stood. One last question. If the galaxy asked you today, should we ever return to Earth? Vorik finally looked him in the eyes. We should be thankful they stopped that silence. The journalist nodded slowly, turned, and walked away. As the station door closed behind him, Vorik sat in the dark again, outside, in the vast cold of space. A faint red light blinked in the distance, not from Earth. But from inside the station. It pulsed slowly. 3 short, 1 long, Morse code. Again, we hear you.